Hello, all. I'm Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with Charlie Bright, and we're going to talk about the current state of the Emmy race. And since it is Game of Thrones weekend, as we were talking about, we believe it's a national holiday now, officially Game of Thrones weekend. Federally, all the banks and post offices should be closed. Um, but it's been nominated for Best Drama Series every year since year one. It is always the most, if not one of the most, if not the most nominated shows of the year. Just from all of its technical accomplishments, acting, writing, directing, all that. Is this finally the year it wins? Can it win this year? It no longer has to deal with Breaking Bad. It's before that, Homeland surprised, and then Mad Men had that lengthy run, so that could potentially factor back in. So what do you think? Do you think Game of Thrones has a shot to win Best Drama Series? And if the answer the answer should be yes because it's Game of Thrones weekend, or else I think we'll be kicked out of the country.
Okay, well, that being said, and this is my legitimate opinion, this field is now so wide open. A Game of Thrones win would not surprise me at all. I have it in at number two. I have House of Cards at number one right now, but really, Game of Thrones winning would not surprise me at all. It's actually I thought after the third season with the whole fallout of or the whole hype that happened after the Red Wedding that could be a year where it potentially would win it hasn't, but it's kept on getting all these nominations. It still has a lot of buzz, and this very well could be the year where it actually finally it all just comes together for it and actually pulls out that win.
I kind of agree with you. I actually have it in my number one spot, and I've had it there for a little while now. Not because I'm super confident it'll win. I think you're right. This is the most wide open Best Drama Series race we've had in years, possibly close to a decade. I can't remember the last drama series race that could have gone in so many different directions as this one. And the reason I have it at number one right now is because last year it could have capitalized on being the cool show, but Breaking Bad had that. It's sort of, the last couple of years, Breaking Bad was the cool water cooler show on television. And it, too, wasn't really, the kind of thing that Emmy voters normally go for. It's dark, it's gritty, which, sometimes they go for, but it wasn't about, rich mobsters. It was sort of down and dirty kind of show that they don't usually go for. And this is a fantasy show. They don't usually go for that. But I think this is a fantasy show that they feel they'll have permission to like, because even though there are CGI dragons in it, it feels very much like you're watching a historical epic about, ancient Rome. So I don't feel like they're going to be alienated from it the same way, they are from other kinds of fantasy. And because now that it has this cool factor and it has Breaking Bad out of the way and House of Cards, it also has that and it also has the prestige. But it was back in February. It might be out of sight, out of mind by the time Game of Thrones is over. So tentatively, I'm saying games.
Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to just say about that with it being fantasy, and this is something that occurred to me in the lead up to where it was nominated for the third season, is that this is a show that has taken, yes, it's a fantasy show, but it's forced it into the mainstream. So now you can't just say, oh, it's just a fantasy show. This is a widely respected and admired and just show that people are crazy about, even people that aren't normally into fantasy or whatever you may want to call the genre. You may not want to call it fantasy. I know there are some nerds out there. Usually, I'm one of them that's like very picky about how you place things. But it's that show that really it's forced itself into the mainstream. So for it to win would not be shocking at all.
Yeah, and another thing about it is that, it's in its fifth season. That's kind of late for a show to start winning Best Drama Series, usually. I mean, of course, Breaking Bad started, one late also. But
24.
24 also, and even The Sopranos took several years.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I think Game of Thrones in particular is in a good position to capitalize on that sort of late season surge is because it has, like a lot of shows, they miss early and they feel like they've missed their window. But Game of Thrones keeps building. The ratings keep going up. The critical acclaim keeps increasing. The Metacritic score from seasons 1 to 4, it was just sort of climbing. This is a show that hasn't peaked yet, every season it keeps peaking. So, all it needs is to strike at the right time, and now it's sort of like Best Drama Series is the Game of Thrones, and the king, Breaking Bad, has died.
He had following the show, yes, his head was cut off.
So Game of Thrones is now the Khaleesi who is coming into, riding in with its dragons into King's Landing, potentially going to take the throne, because it's the right time, and it's a divided field, and it could just do it. But
As someone who's not a religious watcher of that show, I don't understand 7 of those words that you just said, but but no, I do watch it. So everybody stop throwing shit at me. But yeah, no, I'm absolutely with you on that. That's what's really interesting about this race, is that it is so wide open, and there's legitimate thought to almost anything. To coming in and actually winning this thing. I could even see, and I know it sounds crazy, but like Downton Abbey, this show has surprised us a lot of times before, especially the past 2 years, and how it has consistently gotten in for drama series, several acting nominations, and being one of the top nominated programs. And this year actually saw an uptick in how it performed with critics and how it was received. It wasn't just your normal, oh, we like it, it's British, whatever. There was an actual uptick in the quality this season. So, who knows at this point?
Yeah, Downton Abbey had a damn good season, and that's another show that sort of flies under the radar. I mean, it's not the cool show it once was when it started, but its ratings, it hasn't lost a beat. It's still one of the biggest hits on TV, internationally, and of course in the U.S. This show is still a force to be reckoned with. I'd be sort of surprised to see it win. I mean, of the shows that I think are fighting for it, I think it's maybe an underdog, but it's certainly in the realm of possibility. The one I'm looking at that I think, it looked like bad news for it when the Emmys decided to move it to drama series, but Orange is the New Black is well positioned in an open field to sort of take it. I think it might be more of a water cooler show than House of Cards in some ways. It's going to be back with its new season during this Emmy voting cycle, so it'll be fresh in mind of voters. This move, where it's hard for a dramedy to win best comedy series, but for this show to win best drama series, that's certainly possible. I think I'd probably rank that third. I think I have it fourth in my predictions now, but I'm going to move it up to third.
I have it in fifth, which I know will anger Ralph to many a degree. But again, with this whole open field, you just never know. And I could see this benefit. I could see that benefiting Orange. What I'm curious about with your drama series predictions, what do you currently have in 6 and 7 in your because I think these are where it gets a bit difficult, especially because of how wide open the race is. You got in your top positions. I think both of us, we got House of Cards, Game of Thrones, Mad Men, Orange, possibly Downton Abbey. But when you get to 6 and 7, because of how wide open this race is, it's kind of hard to think about. It's kind of hard to finalize what you're putting in those slots. So I'm curious as to what you have in those slots.
Yeah, it's especially difficult because they expanded the field to 7 nominees, at least 7 nominees, if the 2% rule comes into play, where the 8th place finisher and the 9th place finisher get within 2% of 7th place, they'll be nominated too. So we can have as many as 9 nominees in this category, plus we've lost Breaking Bad, plus we've lost True Detective, which isn't coming back for this Emmy cycle. It's not coming back until June. So it's really tough. In 6th place, I've got Empire, which feels like the kind of show the Emmy voters really wouldn't be into, except everyone is into it right now, and the Emmy, the TV Academy does get swept up into these hype machines, even for shows that they're not usually into. Lost, the first season of Lost, they gave it Best Drama Series. They nominated Heroes, a sci-fi comic book show, about superheroes, that's normally not the thing they'd ever nominate, but it was such a huge water hit year that it was too big to deny. And I feel like Empire sort of fits that bill this year. It's just sort of too big to ignore. So even if it's the kind of show that they wouldn't normally go for, I think they're going to go for it this year, and maybe only this year. I'm not sure I'd expect to see it come back, but I wouldn't be surprised if that come in here. And then in 7th place, I feel like moving this out, but I'm not sure what to put in its place. I have The Affair on Showtime, which, the fact that it won the Golden Globe doesn't really, it's one of the only reasons I'm still thinking of it, but that's not really a reason. The Golden Globes really don't influence this. It's possible Better Call Saul is going to be stronger than that. It's possible Homeland, which also had, like Downton Abbey, kind of had a comeback, creative comeback this year. Homeland could come back. So I'm not confident about The Affair, but those are my 6 and 7.
Okay, yeah. In 6 I have The Good Wife, and in 7 I have Empire. Really debating about putting in Better Call Saul in there. It's that was just a real ratings bonanza for AMC, and the critical bonanza as well. Homeland is one I'm strongly considering. Bloodline, I don't know where. Do you think that show is do you think that show has a legitimate shot at getting in, or do you think that's just wishful thinking?
I think it has an outside shot. I think the worst thing that could have happened to that show was Orange is the New Black being bumped over here, because, and it's not that, I don't think the TV Academy cares about how many Netflix shows they have on their ballot, but just in terms of the saturation of dramas, to be the sort of the third tier show on Netflix, I'm not sure it's gonna. I think it might get lost in the shuffle. It otherwise would have. It's from the creators of Damages. It's got Kyle Chandler, Sissy Spacek, Sam Shepard. It's a prestige kind of show that they should be into. But we know they're going to be into House of Cards, and it's probable because they nominated it so many times last year for comedy. It's probable that Orange is the New Black is still going to do well, if not quite as well. We're not sure. So it's possible that Bloodline could just get sort of lost in that. The reviews were good, but they weren't as glowing as it might have hoped for, especially in a race where it's fighting so many other prestige shows. So I don't have it in my top 7. I think it's sort of an underdog, but it could happen.
Okay. I'm very much with you on that. Let's get into these 2 acting races, the lead acting races for drama. We talked about a little bit of this. Who do you have? The drama actress field is very, very interesting this year. And with at least 6 or 7 nominees in there, it's going to be very interesting to see who gets in, who gets knocked out from last year. Who do you have in your number 1 slot? You think will get nominated and most likely win?
I've got Viola Davis in that number 1 slot. It's not a slam dunk by any means, but I think she's a solid bet for a nomination. On name recognition alone, on how big a hit the show was. She's the kind of person who I think she could be the only nominee for that show in any category potentially. But I think, and she has the episodes. She has several episodes out of those 16. I don't think she can pick a bad one, but she could also pick like 2 or 3 or 4 different really great ones. She has such great showcase episodes. She has a couple of episodes where she is doing, James Spader style courtroom passionate defenses and arguments. She has, these passionate scenes with her mother, played by Cicely Tyson, in one episode where she's talking about being abused as a child. She has that one episode, that scene that everyone remembers, where after a long day she pulls off her wig and takes off her makeup, and it's a really vulnerable moment. She has so many great scenes and episodes to choose from that, she's almost definitely going to have an episode that's competitive to win. And so, I feel like right now she's the safest bet.
All right. I have Margulies in number 1 because I think she has several good episodes to submit to the TV Academy that could just be good standalone episodes for her. She, as we talked about, she fell out a couple of years. She won in her 2nd season, fell out the year or 2 after that, and then managed to come back into the race and win again. I could definitely see her getting in there. Curious. So let me go through my list. Tell me on each one whether or not you have them in there. Okay, so I have Margulies,
Yes, I have her in there, but
Claire.
I'm concerned. I'll talk about that later. I'm concerned for
Well, go
Margulies.
into that now. Go into that now. Tell me why you're concerned.
Okay. Um, I'm concerned for Margulies because Kira Sedgwick. What happened with Kira Sedgwick a few years ago was she got nominated, and never won, and then she won. She had a great episode submission. She actually beat Juliana Margulies. That was the first season of The Good Wife, where we all thought Margulies would have been the front runner. Um, and then the next year, Kira Sedgwick was dropped. And so I feel like we could see that happen to Juliana Margulies this year. Potentially, I'm still predicting her in my top 6, but I potentially think she's at risk because she had won, she fell out of the category. The show had a great season, and she got nominated again, and she won. We don't know where came in for that nomination though. Maybe she was in slot 4, 5, 6. Maybe she was on the lower end there. We don't know. So we could see her dropped out, especially because this category is so competitive. This drama actress category, I wish this was the Oscar race for Best Actress. It's so much better than the Oscar race for Best Actress was. There's so much more so much more material for these actresses to chew on this year.
No question.
And so with such a crowded field, and we don't know where she stood on the nomination last year, whether she just squeaked in and won on the strength of that really great episode submission, she is vulnerable. I'm predicting her to get in. She is definitely vulnerable. We should not consider her a lock.
Okay. What about Claire Danes? Do you have her getting in?
I don't have her getting in, but I don't fault you for having her in there. She could definitely get back in there.
Okay. Robin Wright, House of Cards.
She is definitely getting in there.
All right.
Whether or not she wins, I feel like she's a safe nominee.
Okay. I have Viola Davis in my 4th slot. Taraji P. Henson, Empire.
I have her in there. She could get in. She could not get in. It's a new show, which is hard to tell. It's a campy kind of show, which is especially hard to tell how that's going to go over. She has episodes. She could win it. I mean, she has. If the voters are into that kind of thing, it's sort of. She might face the scandal problem that Kerry Washington has, where it's just so over the top and so extravagant that voters might not take it seriously enough. But she's an Oscar-nominated actress, and it's the showiest character in this race probably if she's nominated, and she has showy episodes. She's throwing things, she's crying, she's screaming, she's fighting. She could
Hell,
surprise
in one
with
episode
a
she
win.
has her legs up and is inviting someone to taste her cookies. Can we just say if this show was in comedy, which sometimes I think it should be, she would win with that. She would win with that episode.
She potentially could. It teeters so on the edge of comedy and drama that I don't know if you could even really complain if it went comedy. It's like, oh no, that's such a drama. No, it's like, really.
Exactly. And my last person I have in there right now is Elizabeth Moss for Mad Men. One last nomination. What do you have her in there?
I don't actually have her in there. I actually hadn't thought of her until you mentioned her. I don't see her coming back into the Best Actress category. She might, though. I think the ones that I'm looking at my list, and the contenders in my 5 and 6 slots are the ones we disagree on, obviously. I have Taylor Schilling for Orange is the New Black. I think if Orange is the New Black comes into drama, I think she comes in along with it. I don't think she's a guarantee. I don't think necessarily she's like Taraji P. Henson. It's not like if you nominate Empire, she definitely goes along for the ride, because that's very much an ensemble show. And Taylor Schilling isn't always necessarily even the most acclaimed member of that cast. But I feel like she gets in with Orange. And then in that 6th slot, I keep going back. I could put any number of like 7 or 8 different women in that 6th slot right now at this particular minute with no confidence. Really, I have Michelle Dockery coming back in there.
Okay, I thought you would have had Ruth Wilson in there for The Affair, but
she's one of those actors who I'm teetering between. I feel like if The Affair gets into drama, she gets into drama actress. So. I feel like she almost has a better chance than the show in some ways. I'd be surprised to see the show nominated without her. But but there are 7 slots for drama and 6 slots for drama actress, which makes it harder. I really hope she gets in, because I want to see the kind of race where you have these heavyweight episode submissions going against each other, and it's no matter which way you go, it's a winner. And she has that kind of episode, and she is, it's my favorite episode for her. She has a few that are very good. My favorite for her is the 9th episode of the season, the penultimate episode of the season, where she has this breakdown scene with the doctor of her child, who we learn earlier on in the season had died suddenly and tragically, and it's a huge, emotional, dramatic showcase. It might be the best single scene anyone in this category submits if she gets nominated and picks that episode. But yeah, she doesn't really have the name recognition. I don't know that the affair has the heat in a very crowded race. There are so many other women that I could put there also. I'm struggling with that one.
But there's 2 names that I think are interesting that we haven't mentioned so far. First of all, Kerry Washington. Do you have her getting in this year? And what do you think is happening where it seems like she might slip out this year?
I think she's probably done. It would be really cynical to assume that because we've got Viola Davis and Taraji P. Henson that they won't nominate Kerry Washington because of they've fulfilled their diversity quota. But that I think that's what happened to Selma at the Oscars. I'm not above I don't put it past the TV Academy to do the same thing and decide that one bit of diversity is enough. We don't need more of it. But I don't think these shows are coded the same as things like Selma and 12 Years a Slave are in film. I think these are just sort of play like TV shows that that just happen to have black leads. So I don't think that's necessarily the problem. I think the bigger problem is that she is, of the 3 women leading kind of soapy, over-the-top dramas, she's 3rd behind Taraji and behind Viola Davis. And they have more prestige, they have Oscar nominations, they have their movie stars, they have more buzz behind them this year. Scandal is still a huge hit, but it's not the same breakout it was a couple of seasons ago, and it just never really worked for her at the Emmys, and it's not the kind of show they normally go for anyway. So I feel like she falls out this year.
And usually, me and Marcus always say that our basic way to work Emmy nominees is to start with last year's nominees, figure out which ones aren't coming back because of cancellations or the show ending or whatever, and then you work from there. And so I got to bring up Lizzie Kaplan for Masters of Sex. Since she got in last year, she's had a very strong episode last year. Do you think that we are underestimating her again this year? I think we could be.
I think we could be also.
Mm-hmm.
She's one of those women who I've sort of swapped her in and out of that 6th slot. She could absolutely come back. The fact that she was nominated last year, the category wasn't quite this stacked last year, but it was still incredibly difficult. She got nominated. It was not a name check nomination because she is not an A-list kind of star who you'd expect the Emmy voters just to go, oh, Lizzie Kaplan's on the ballot, check. So they had to be watching the show. They had to really, really admire her performance to get her in there. She was even better in season 2. She has a much better episode to submit in season 2. This episode called Fight, which was early in the season. It's basically a 2-hander between her and Michael Sheen. If she gets nominated and submits that, she could absolutely win. In fact, I'm really kind of holding out hope that Masters of Sex maybe was just sort of shy of nominations last year that would have gotten. Because the fact that Lizzie Kaplan got in meant that people were watching this show, and so maybe Michael Sheen gets in the Best Actor. There are 3 spots for Best Actor this season at least. Maybe it gets into Best Drama Series because we've got 2 open slots for a drama series and an extra 7th slot. So I feel like across the board, Masters of Sex is sort of this. It could be. It could have missed its window. Maybe it's not going to happen anywhere. But it could be this sleeping giant where we could be surprised that it has more support than we thought it did last year.
And if it is a sleeping giant, hopefully Emmy nominations means that they found the G spot. But I don't know if that's kosher or not. So yeah, you just talked about actor. Let's talk about the best actor in a drama field. Who do you have in your number one slot?
I've got Kevin Spacey in there, sort of by default. I'm not entirely convinced he'll win, but he feels like the safest bet for a nomination, and the show has got a really good chance at drama series, and he's an Oscar winner. He has that prestige behind him. He's got the Matthew McConaughey and Bryan Cranston are out of the way this time. I feel like he's probably the safe bet right now, but it feels like he's sort of my default number one choice.
See, I have Bob Odenkirk in my number one slot right now for Better Call Saul. I think regardless of whether or not it gets nominated for drama series, I think Odenkirk has definitely got the prestige, definitely has the gravitas, and I think he's won over a lot of respect. He is a two-time Emmy winner. It should be noted. He won for writing Saturday Night Live in the late '80s, and then as one of the writers of the Ben Stiller Show in the early '90s. But I think he's really showcased himself as a dramatic actor, and I think it's a pretty safe bet that he will get in. And so I have him in number one for that reason. I have Spacey in number two.
I have Odenkirk in my top six. I sort of have him on the bubble. I'm still skeptical about how the show will be received by the Emmys, just because, you might say that it's helped by the fact that it's, the spin-off of Breaking Bad, and they love Breaking Bad so much, but I think that's a double-edged sword. I think it's not only benefiting from, the Bay Breaking Bad connection, it's also potentially at risk of being in the shadow of Breaking Bad. So I have him in my top six, but I feel like he's on the bubble.
Yeah, and I think we both have John Hamm in there to get one last nomination. And then the other three slots, are just kind of up in the air with this. I got Jeff Daniels getting in for the final season of The Newsroom, and he's someone who I think not only will get in, but he submits that finale. I think he could very well win with that.
I don't see him winning again. I mean, stranger things have happened.
Like when he won the first time.
that was not stranger. That was always in the realm of possibility. We had him ranked kind of low, but I remember that being kind of a really tough year. There was a lot of.
That was the year that was the year after the Merritt Wever win, which was the first win of the evening. I emailed you and all the editors, and I said all our predictions just went to shit.
I always felt that pilot episode and that, like, I thought the character came off as kind of a jerk after that opening scene with that huge speech about the state of America. But that's, he was front and center the whole episode, and he had that opening speech. I don't think I had him ranked very highly that year, but I don't think that was as surprising as it would be if he wins again.
Well, I will say, what's that?
Especially for the last season when it was basically canceled and sort of went off the air with just like 6 episodes, and I don't see it happening. But again, stranger things. If Merritt Wever was stranger than Jeff Daniels' repeat win would be.
Well, I think he shouldn't be counted out. And he's in this season. He's much more likable in this season than he has been in the previous 2 seasons. So if that was a deficit that he had to overcome, it's not going to be as big a thing for him to overcome this year. Another show that is ended this year that we should have. We didn't talk about it with drama series, is Boardwalk Empire. I have Steve Buscemi at number 5. Do you have him in your predictions?
I don't. I feel like that show sort of is done with Emmys. I feel when a show falls out of certain categories, it's very hard to come back, and I don't see a reason why this one does. They love the show the first couple of seasons. He was nominated the first 2 or 3 years. But then it just sort of fell off, and it still gets a lot of below the line nominations, directing nominations, and that sort of thing. but I don't know that there's enough heat off of that final season, especially when it's also the final season of Mad Men. That's going to overshadow it for Farewell Love. I don't see Boardwalk Empire making a comeback this year.
All right. Well, I will dare you to be wrong on that one. And my sixth slot, I have a placeholder. I have Kyle Chandler for Bloodline. What are your rounding out your fifth and sixth slots?
Well, my 1, 2, and 3, that's Spacey, Ham, and actually Jeff Daniels I have in third place, just because, there's last year's nominees, like half of them are gone. Then I actually have Clive Owen getting in for the Nick. And probably, that's another one of those things where I could see that being the only nomination for the show. Very much a sort of a name check, name recognition kind of nomination. The TV Academy is familiar with him and fond of him. They nominated him for Hemingway and Gellhorn in the movie miniseries race. So I have him in fourth, and then I have also Kyle Chandler getting in for Bloodline. Emmy favorite. He won for Friday Night Lights, and even if the Bloodline doesn't get nominated for Best Drama Series, I can see him getting in for this. And actually, my sixth slot is Odenkirk.
Okay. Those are really most of the major contenders. I think there are two others that we should discuss before we round things out. And one is Dominic West for The Affair. I'm not sure. I think he kind of probably has sort of a wire curse on him. But even, when The Hour was getting nominated for writing, he wasn't getting in for The Hour. Do you think he can overcome that this year?
He can, but the Affair has to go over, I think, pretty big. I think of drama series, Best Actress, and Best Actor, I think Best Actor is going to be the hardest one. I think Dominic West, poor guy. I love Dominic West. He was fantastic on The Wire, never nominated for that. Although Idris Elba also had that wire curse, and he managed to shake that off with a couple of nominations for Luther in The Big C.
That's right.
So it's possible for Wire people to get in there. And then The Hour, which is a show that not that many people watched or cared about, but I adored that show. That was a magnificent show. He wasn't nominated for that either, even though it won for Best Writing in its second season, beating Behind the Candelabra, which won everything else. He still couldn't get in. And now this is probably his best shot that he's ever had. And just I want to see him just get in for the body of work. And actually, I forgot one. He played Richard Burton last year in the TV movie where Helena Bonham Carter got nominated for playing Elizabeth Taylor, and he didn't get nominated for that either. So just for his body of work, I want to see him finally recognized with a nomination. He's been doing some of the best TV work of the last 10 years, and he's not been nominated yet.
So take note, Academy, if you're watching this, just saying. And one other person we should talk about, Terrence Howard for Empire. Are we underestimating him?
We very well might be. He's an Oscar-nominated actor. He does have that prestige, the same kind of prestige that Taraji P. Henson has. But I think the biggest problem for him is probably the character. And it's not necessarily that the character is unlikable, because obviously we've seen 100 unlikable characters win this award, a bunch of villains. But in terms of just showy, exciting characters, if you ask anyone on, about Empire, who's your favorite character on that show, I don't think anyone says Lucius Lyons. It's not really that big, dynamic, showy, emotional role. He just sort of lords over all the other, all his wife and his girlfriend and his children, and just acts like a jerk. And that's basically his whole arc for the entire season for the most part. It's not the showiest, most emotional kind of role, and I feel like, he's not the weakest link in terms of acting, but I feel like the character is not really anyone's highlight from the show.
Well, I think I think you make some good points, but I also think you're kind of crazy, because I'm going to put him in my number 5 slot right now. I'm going to take out Kyle Chandler, bump Steve Buscemi down to 6, and put Terrence Howard in my number 5 slot. So if this will work. If I could, there we go. And no, Jeff Daniels, you get back in your position. Okay, okay. So
The
yes,
production center is fighting you because you're so crazy.
no, well, no, that's it is true. It is true. I am very crazy about this, but I'm fairly confident about this, and I believe you're wrong. But I will respect your right to be wrong, as I do, because I'm such a very benevolent person.
Well, I just checked. We should note that even though we are kind of down on Dominic West's chances, he actually ranks fifth in overall odds. So hopefully the two of us are wrong, and they actually get behind him. Uh, and we've also got Terrence James Spader in our top 10, I think, for potential nomination. I don't see that happening.
No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah,
That's
he
not going to happen.
last year was his window. If he couldn't get in last year, I don't think he gets in for this role.
Yeah, yeah. We love you, James Spader, but yeah, this is not happening.
Maybe for
Well,
your
there's
next show.
yes. Let's hope it's a show that Aaron Sorkin writes or writes with David E. Kelly. That would be fun to watch. Although those two egos going with each other, who knows what would happen? I think the set might implode.
It would just be all speeches. They wouldn't even be able to afford a set. It's just characters talking,
It would
like
be an it,
20-page monologues just trading off.
it would be an examination of a forensics team. So I think that's about it for what we can talk about right now. We wish Ralph could have been with us so we could have pointed out how wrong he is about almost everything. But
Well, I mean, it's better that he's not here, so we could just it's just sort of always assumed anyway. So
oh, Ralph, you're so wrong, but we love you so much because you give us so much fodder. So with that, I think we'll say goodbye, and we will be back with a bunch more of these. So everyone, take care.